And I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, because I'm sure the watchers and listeners would be curious about, you shared some of the downloads that you've been getting about what's going on around the world. Are there any parts of that would be good to share?
Well, honestly, I think your energy transmissions are so in line. I mean, whenever I hear one of yours, I'm like, yep, yep, check, check, check. I don't think I have new things to say except to trust and continue. I mean, that's it's so tempting to collapse and stay collapsed. It's so tempting to go to despair and then just not get out.
Yeah.
It's so tempting to fall to anxiety and just let it run everything. It's so for people to do their transformational processes, whatever those are, and whatever their spirit and soul align with, and get even more clear about asking for help, receiving help. I like to say, ask again, ask differently. Like, don't just ask and then scurry away and say, see, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If it didn't happen, ask again. And if it still doesn't happen, ask differently.
Yeah.
You may need to ask a different person. You may need to ask more nakedly. You may need to ask with more enthusiasm. You may need to ask more calmly. You may need to ask with less attachments. There's a whole panoply there.
So true. I remember one of the things that kind of shocked me at the time, although I reflected on it and it made sense, was when my guides 20 years ago said, you have to ask for help. The universe will always help. Angelics will help, but you have to ask for it. We can't always interfere and cross into your timeline. You have to be ready to receive. And I love that. Ask again, ask a different way. It's so true.
Yes. And I also want to say that for people who are recovering perfectionists, recovering procrastinators, people pleasers, overachievers, any of this kind of realm, which a lot of creative people are, it's even more important that you learn how to ask and receive, because I like to say most people have PhDs in giving and they're not in kindergarten with receiving. And they ask very little. In fact, people pride themselves on not asking much. I don't ask for much. They'll start things with that sentence that I don't ask for much. And so I always stop and I said, why not? And I mean, having said that, I want to say that I am shy. I don't ever want to ask. I resist asking every single time. I try to get out of asking. I try to find some other way to do it so I don't have to ask. A dear friend asked me the other day, well, you don't avoid. She was talking about admitting that she was avoiding. And she said, but you don't avoid. I said, who do you think I am? I said, I'm avoiding everything that I can possibly avoid. What, are you absolutely out of your mind? Like I just had this big outburst because it's tempting to project onto, this, leaders or teachers, it's tempting to project onto them that they don't have the anxiety, that they're not scared to ask, that they're confident, that they're marching around, accomplishing all the things. And, they're just happy to ask. Oh, another great chance to ask.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that you can ask really badly and it can still work. You can ask partially, imperfectly, poorly, badly conceived. Someone asked me to write a foreword for their book recently, as people do all the time. And she just stumbled and fumbled and said, I just need to ask you. I mean, I'm kind of scared to ask you, but I just need to. I mean, I don't know. Would you ever possibly be willing to, and finally got it out. And I said, yes. And she nearly fainted,
That's so good. But it's funny because this reminds me of boundaries. Like boundaries is something I've had to learn and learn and learn and learn, and therefore I ended up, as is often the way, teaching it too. And one of the things that I learned, and one of the things I will teach people, is when you first start giving yourself boundaries, you will do it really badly. You will do it really inelegantly. It won't come out of your mouth like some Hollywood speech, that's been beautifully crafted by writers. You're gonna mess it up. But if you're afraid to do it badly, we never get started, because gradually the the more our nerves kind of adjust to the whole thing, we're not running the anxiety that makes us fumble and lose our center. So, we've kind of got to get in there and do a messy job at first. If we ever want to get to a place where that has become a bit more known to us or a bit more in us.
Exactly. And you can name the fear. You can say, I'm really nervous to ask you this. And would you be willing to write the foreword for my book?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it all comes down from a tangle of things into some kind of clear ask.
Beautiful.